afternoon. It's Latanya Darden here with the Rain Project podcast, where I feel like I am the hope dealer. I'm out here spreading hope all around Chicago so far, but I plan to get to your city soon. My special guest today is Camille Durham. She is a criminal defense attorney.
That's right.
And I'm so excited because she has done a lot of great things for the African American community when it comes to the criminal justice system. So go ahead, Camille, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be on the Rain Project, and thank you for inviting me. So I am born and raised here in Chicago. I'm currently a criminal defense attorney. I graduated law school in 2007 from Chicago Kent Law School. Spent 6 years as a writing attorney where I did legal research and drafted orders for criminal court judges. I am currently, since 2013, a criminal defense attorney. I work out of the main courthouse, 26 in California, and I mainly represent indigent people or those who can't really afford a lot of money. And I handle felony matters from possession, drug case, or retail theft, all the way up to some criminal sexual assaults and some serious cases. Yeah.
Okay. How did you get into getting into law?
Well, I wasn't one of those people that grew up knowing they wanted to be a lawyer. Mm-hmm. I always was that person that wanted to help people personality-wise. My mother actually was a criminal defense attorney for a short time, and then she did some human rights legal work, anti-death penalty work. Okay. So it was kind of in the blood, but I still didn't know that I wanted to do it. My bachelor's degree is actually in psychology. Okay. And I thought that I wanted to go further into forensic psychology. So still kind of somewhat in the criminal justice system, but really figuring out why people were doing things.
Right.
I was actually a sheriff at 26th Street as I finished my bachelor's degree, and being in and out of the courtrooms, listening to trials, interacting with the defendants, seeing the need, it really helped shape my next steps, because once I graduated, I was either gonna go on to a master's PhD program in psychology or law school. Okay. And I just had to ask myself, I looked at it as this: if law wasn't something I wanted to do after I tried it, it gave me more options as a degree.
Exactly.
Instead of necessarily pigeonholing, and not in a bad way, but just being on that direct route for psychology. Mm-hmm. And it just was something about the environment that really just, helped me make that decision. I applied to one law school, which is unheard of.
Right.
It was really just stepping out on faith and a wing and a prayer.
This is what I'm going to do.
This is what I'm going to do. I mean, putting all your eggs in one basket, especially for law school, is unheard of. But it worked. It worked. Chicago Kent accepted me and gave me a partial scholarship. And I left work and went to school full time. Okay. I had a child at the time. My son was probably 8. And so it was tight financially. I had some family help because I had a home by that time. Right. But I really wanted to finish law school on a full-time schedule, because when you go part-time, it takes quite some time. And I had already been a full-time worker and a part-time student at night with my son all those other years while I finished my degree. So I just kind of wanted to get through it. Okay. And, God is good. I made it through. I graduated in 2007, and the rest is history. So making history.
Ladies, with these kids, anything is possible. You can still do it.
Absolutely. And everyone's journey definitely doesn't have to be the same, and it doesn't have to be the prettiest. Exactly. It doesn't have to be the top schools.
Just get it done.
Get it done. It all adds up together. I can tell you, for my bachelor's degree, I probably went to, no joke, because I used to live in New York for a minute. Collectively, I ended up graduating from Chicago State, but I had went to probably 4 or 5 colleges.
Wow.
Just, you know, some of them were city colleges in New York, and I would take some credits when I had my son, and then I would pick up more. And I say that to say a lot of people want to have that one great school name, and you know, I went to Michigan and then I went to Harvard, and that's beautiful, and it's not a knock on those wonderful institutions, but don't ever think that the pieces, as long as they add up to the same thing, and that same piece of paper, it's about you and what you're going to bring to it. So the papers don't define you or how you got them, you know?
So how did you decide on working with the population that you do work with? Which is everyone. She works with the majority African American males in the city of Chicago.
They're just my people. You know, I felt the need, and I know the injustice that happens day in and day out, not only on the streets, but in the court system. And I just wanted to be accessible. You know, I wanted to be able to offer my gifts and my passion and my compassion to people who look like me. You know, I grew up partially on the west side of Chicago, graduated 8th grade from Precious Blood off Western, have lived on the north side, have lived on the south side, so I know the city, and I've been the only black person in some classes, and I've went to predominantly black schools, so it's been always a mixture for me.
And Holy Name Cathedral.
And Holy Name Cathedral, which is where I graduated high school. And how I know this beautiful lady here. And so I just wanted to be able to be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you feel racism affects the criminal justice system?
Whew. Well, that's the whole thing. So I always like to start with the impact that poverty has before the people even reach the criminal justice system, and you have to really factor it in order to really understand the whole picture. So the impact, socioeconomic disparities, the segregation, let's just talk about in particular Chicago, the neighborhoods, the public school systems not getting the same resources, the communities not having the same outlets for children. All of that makes an impact from when they're so little, and what leads them often into either the juvenile criminal system or the adult system where I work at. And so the racism that ties into why there are so many pockets of poverty still. Right? And we know that this really was built to be this way. And it's not because we can't work any harder than any other community, or we don't, not smart. Absolutely.
It was set up this way.
Absolutely. And this goes back long history. So you tie in the poverty and the lack of resources in the community, the over-policing in the schools. Right? So the schools may not even have a social worker, a librarian, but they have 2 or 3 police officers and metal detectors. And this is not whether some schools need metal detectors or the importance of that. We know there are other reasons possibly for that, school shootings and different things that prompted, but the over-policing of schools in predominantly black neighborhoods, and the really school to prison pipeline, right, that starts even at that high school level. And so it really begins there. And so you're up against so much just even as a child.
Right.
And so then you get to, let's just talk about the first layer. I like to say it's like an onion. The police department and the aggressive policing. The aggressive policing in many of the black neighborhoods is really almost one of those first layers of attack in this system. And it's not an attack on police. And you know, we're here with the whole Black Lives Matter and the protests, and I'm really so over people thinking it has to be either or.
Right, it doesn't.
Right, and first of all, blue is not, black people are black people. Blue is a uniform that you wear.
Exactly.
Okay, and that frankly I used to wear at one point, but I'm a black woman.
Right.
All
right.
day, every day first, right? And so if I wear blue, I still have the capacity and the knowledge and the compassion to see when something was done wrong with me, right? And so that's just called humanity, right? And that's what I like to lead from first. And I'm sure that there are a lot of human people on the police force who unfortunately get caught up in a system that really does not even allow you to speak up against your fellow officer without backlash, without
boys club.
Yes, you know that's the huge blue wall of silence, and so that we know that's a whole thing.
That's a whole other thing.
Right. But speaking about the neighborhoods, oftentimes there's a lot of illegal search and seizures, a lot of illegal stops of people. Breonna Taylor, oh, that was horrible. Those no-knock warrants are really, because can you even fathom anyone being able to enter your house, and they're usually going to go under the cover of night and not expect you to retaliate in a way of protecting your home? Who would even think that that is an acceptable practice?
But because I'm the police, I can do what I want to do.
Exactly. And then when you shoot back at me, you want to arrest me. Now that young man, fortunately, the charges were dropped, but it's just those type of practices that are usually done in the African American or black communities, and that is a lot of the problem. So I live on the east side. I see all the time up and down Stony Island Avenue, police with cars pulled over. Now, traffic violations happen. Yeah. I'm not challenging every traffic stop, but just being in the capacity of work I do and reading the reports.
You know, they was all bullshit.
Yes, very much. Yes, very much so. And so there becomes a lot of racial profiling.
Yes.
And you can't have me out of the car and within 3 minutes search the car without articulable suspicion or reasonable probable cause. And most of the time those don't exist, but because they think people don't know, and a lot of people don't know because they're not educated in the law in that way, they take advantage, and then they're here, and it's a lot of the undercovers with their vests and guns, and there's 3 of them, and so when that's showing of force, people don't want to push against that, right? You know, so
and you watch TV and you see how the turnout is.
Absolutely, and so there's that fear. So that I would say is the first layer. Stopping and arresting people, black people, for riding their bikes on the sidewalk and using it as a pretense to search them and maybe finding a bag of drugs and arresting them for that instead of giving them a warning, maybe throwing out that one bag of drugs and saying, hey. So there's no discretion, no mercy, no compassion used, I think, in our communities. Things that could possibly be given a ticket, people are arrested for. So they have to go process, be fingerprinted, go to jail overnight, possibly if they're on their way to work, don't have anyone to call their job.
No show, can't speak to anyone.
It's terrible. And for very petty things and things that most people don't even know are illegal. Okay, so I have a colleague who had a case where, and we know cannabis is legal now, and this person was a passenger at a traffic stop, and they said that the container that the cannabis was in was not odor proof. And so that's this minuscule law on the books that
petty stuff.
Petty. So and if I was an officer, I'd say, hey, next time, you know, be careful because someone else, but that just does not happen. Those type of moments of,
they treat you like you did a murder.
Yeah. So that aggressive policing of the communities where things are charged that typically would not be charged, that is the first layer. And then you get to the court system because you have to go to bond court right after an arrest. And then there's that next layer where we see racism can play a role in the system because there's a lot of reforms ongoing now about bond reform and, you know, if things are not violent crimes, mostly should not have cash bonds or D bonds or get I bonds. But there's ways that judges are even working around that and finding a way to still somehow make it a little bit out of reach. And there are a lot of fair judges who do bond court who recognize all of these layers of things that we are talking about. And despite your 10 drug convictions, they're drug convictions. I mean, and more than likely, if you are a drug addict or have a drug issue, you're going to continue, and that might be one bag you had. That might be, I had 2 bags in my pocket. That's a simple class 4 PCS that you might took probation for, but I didn't get that treatment, and so I'm going to keep getting them. But, you know, that shouldn't keep me in jail. I am strongly in favor of only violent crimes. You know, causing people to be actually detained. But, you know, that's a whole nother thing. So bond court is another area.
Real quick, what is the benefit of the criminal justice system holding our men with high bonds anyway, off of any type of crime? What does it benefit the court system or the Cook County Jail, just because we're talking about the Cook County Jail?
I think a lot of times it's about money. You know, I think it's a lot of times it's a new form of slavery, just to keep it real.
Because each inmate that is detained, does the state give Cook County a certain amount of money?
I believe so. I believe they make so much money off of each person. And besides the money, I think it's just become
normal. It's normalized.
You know, it's just become the norm. It's removing them from the communities. It's removing them from their families. From the workforce. So I think part of the reason that so many are incarcerated is basically systemic racism, institutionalized racism. A lot of times they just don't care. And a lot of times it's money. Now that may apply more for like private prisons, where there are more now prisons being built as schools. And so, you know, that's part of the plan. So bond court is the place where basically your fate is decided, right? In the beginning of whether you're going to get to go home and fight your case or stay in custody. And like I said, now there have been some reforms, and even since COVID-19, there has been a huge burst of inmates being released who just simply couldn't afford maybe $1,000.
That's so crazy.
It's so many. I've had clients who could not get out for maybe $500. Homeless. I mean, it breaks your heart because even with family who care about them, that is a hardship, you know. And to think your liberty, like your actually liberty, is taken for stealing out a jewel, or writing a check, or having drugs with you. And it's not about being a proponent of crime. I think no one likes crime, right? But I think that breaks down to who's writing the laws about what makes a crime, okay? And how the system is disproportionately negatively affecting Black people. So it's a bifurcated thing. And that's how do you know, my family has been victims. So no one likes to be heard. No one likes to be victimized. But it's about fairness and everyone being treated fairly. And that doesn't happen. So after bond court, where a lot of people may be held over an amount that they cannot afford, and it's mostly Black people being brought into the system because it's mostly the Black neighborhoods going back that are being aggressively patrolled, and those times when the officer cannot charge, he's still charging. For instance, the state's attorney Kim Foxx made a decision a while ago to stop prosecuting driving on a suspended license if it was for tickets. A lot of people lose their license because they have so many parking tickets and can't pay them. So she stopped going forward in court with those. Now, if you were suspended for DUI or some other reason, that was different. even though she relayed that to the police, I'm sure
they still do that.
We get droves of people. That was the basis for their
and then you followed up the court system with the bull crap.
Yes, that once it goes to court, but that person has either had to get a lawyer or go through being in jail, explain their job now. I have to go to court dates. I mean, so it's a lot that goes with it. After bond court, if the person, their case goes to a preliminary hearing, and that's where a judge decides if the police have probable cause to charge them with that particular offense. Mm-hmm. Was there enough evidence, and did it connect to them in a good enough way? Or the grand jury indicts them, and that's where a group of citizens come in, and the police and the state's attorney go in there and tell them what they allege. Mm-hmm. There's no defendant in there, no defendant's attorney, and so they can issue an indictment. Those are the two ways that you can go to trial court.
Could you imagine the conversation in there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's such a one-sided thing, and I don't even know how it's still legal. Actually, we get transcripts of it, but it's basically the state saying, "Officer, what happened?" Okay, well, Tony, I saw Mr. So-and-so driving. He ran a red light. I pulled him over. I saw him reaching. Told him to get out the car because I saw him reaching. I feared for my safety. I didn't know what he had. And we opened the console and there was a gun. So there's no one there to say, well, how about when you know, in those little details, because that's where the lies are, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. In a grand jury forum, there is no. So indictments are nearly 100% of the time. Right. And so then you have to kind of go through the court system. Once you get past that stage, your case actually goes to a trial court in front of a particular judge. And that's where your case is going to either end up getting dismissed, pled out, mm-hmm. or go to trial. And that is another layer of where the injustices happen, because racism is in the courtroom oftentimes.
Just because you're black, you're guilty already.
You know, a lot of times, you know, unfortunately, racism is in every agency, mm-hmm. Every role. So you have some state's attorneys who are truly took on that job to represent victims, and they actually want to help. And if mm-hmm. they see that yours is a case where really there was no real victim, and you know things are not as bad, and this is a young man who's on his way to college, they will work with you and help you fashion some type of way that is the least negative impact on that person.
Right.
Then you have the kind who have no mercy, no regard. They look, I believe, at everyone as the same, and probably behind closed doors have a lot of negative views and stereotypes against black people. And so you almost trying to just get something out of nothing mm-hmm. there.
You knowing that it's a losing battle.
Yeah. So you know you're asking for mitigation on a case where you know. You should get it, but you're fighting this uphill battle, and you're seeing black defendants and non-black defendants get sentenced differently for the same crimes with almost the same backgrounds oftentimes. You know, you're seeing just the little small injustices, the comments mm-hmm. that are made offhand, you know, by certain people. Mm-hmm. So it's the small little bits of racism to the, you know, why are you in my court? Hi, you know, and I'm the kind that I'm gonna just say, you know what I mean? I kind of can get on my soapbox and talk. So I'll say it to a judge in a minute.
Camille and I are similar in our approach to people.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say to a judge in a minute, you know, judge, if we know that this client is a drug addict, like we were saying earlier, we should expect them. I mean, every time you go to rehab, they say expect a relapse, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe a couple before success
Even
happens.
with people with millions of dollars in their bank accounts.
Yes, absolutely. Even let's talk about the heroin. You know, epidemic. Or it became one when it started affecting a lot of young white suburban teenagers, and it was such a compassionate
now we see all the commercials on TV.
Yes.
Ooh,
yes. But there are plenty of Black people who unfortunately suffer from heroin addiction.
They've been nodding for years.
Right. And you sucker. And even we think back about the crack epidemic and how it tore up families and really ripped through communities. And that's when a lot of this prison, the numbers drastically increased. And there was no compassion.
For a higher amount of time than a white person would go for crack.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
same thing, cooked different.
Mm-hmm. And that's where a lot of these legal disparities and sentencing started happening, but they would write it in such a way where it wouldn't say, I know that this is going to disproportionately affect the Black communities, but they did it for crimes where they saw maybe there were more arrests because they know most police are there more. So you get, sometimes the deals are not the same. Definitely having jury trials, trying to find a fair jury of your client's peers or just people who will look and really embrace the innocent until proven guilty and not look at them as just a criminal number.
And that's hard because the news always depicts African Americans. Even when crime is committed against them with the police department, the first thing they go towards is their past.
Yeah, all the time.
The bad part of their past.
You can't even be a victim, a Black victim in Chicago.
Black victims do not
record
exist.
Is not in the paper the next day, and they haven't even named the person that killed you.
So, and for the last thing I remember is when you were a teenager, all that is supposed to have been expunged and thrown out, and we never hear
juvenile
about it.
Stuff supposed to be sealed.
But all of a sudden, when he was 13, whoa, news reporter man.
Right. And so this is supposed to be a system of rehabilitation is what they call the justice system. It's not at all. And we're surprised when people who are in and out of jail, some of them will take classes and really try, but you become institutionalized, right? You don't really know how to not be in jail. You oftentimes are treated like an animal. You start maybe acting like one or behaving in certain ways to make it through. And oftentimes I want to say to my state's attorneys who fight against maybe letting someone out just to fight against it.
Just to be doing it.
You go spend one night. You go spend one night in that jail and see if you would come back and be so against some of these bond reviews that you really could care less if this person got out or not, but they're so conditioned for their numbers to get convictions oftentimes. And again, this is not all state's attorneys, but it's definitely an institutional problem. And
I know a lot of professions have, it is a number game. And it's all, even with the police, you gotta have a certain amount of tickets written by the end of the month, things like that. So do state's attorneys, do they have to have a certain amount of cases, convictions or whatever? Because if that's the case, that right there should be eliminated. Period. We should just be working off what's happening, not off a number game.
And they would probably never let us know it, so I'm not sure, but I definitely know that the conviction is what's probably most important for most of them. And that means
that's their
plea or trial. They much rather plea everything.
And
and
a lot of people plea and not even guilty at all, but because they just want to hurt you to have you sit in the county for a year, and they're just ready to get up out of there.
I have begged clients. I've had clients who pled and it was their first felony, and I've cried. Girls, young kids, when it first happened. But people feel pressured, right? A lot of the things are out of our hands. A lot of times the possibility if you go to trial and the judge doesn't believe you or your innocence, or the jury, and you could possibly get 20, that 5 years, you're thinking, I didn't do it, but do I want to take that risk? And so it becomes this great weight that you have to figure out how to burden and carry, and so it's a lot. It's a lot with the system.
And it's generational curses as well, because if you have a criminal in your family, if you've committed a crime 9 times out of 10, someone else in your family may have also went to jail. And then all you're doing is listening to your family. Just take a plea, just take a plea, just take a plea. So you're doing that out of learned behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. And lack of legal knowledge and lack of sometimes never really bumping into that person during your journey through the system that really kind of cared and saw you as a person. You know, I have a wonderful fellow criminal defense attorney and friend, April Prayer, who you know, who does Justice Junkie, and she has done probably thousands now of videos on Facebook and YouTube where she's trying to teach the community about law, how to interact, and just some of the basic concepts and making them just easy for the layperson to understand. And that's what we need. I think we need more community street law classes in high school, really even at the grade school level, to understand. Like,
we're going to work on that together.
I think it would be great. I think young people don't realize even this accountability law, where you can be with your friend asks for a ride to the store. You might know your friend carries a gun, but that's his business. You don't.
You didn't see it.
You didn't see it. And your friend goes in and robs that store, ends up shooting the teller and kills him. He comes back to the car, you're thinking, what? You know, why would you do this? And the car gets pulled over, the gun gets found, all of you all are going to jail, right? And the state is gonna say that you're accountable for your friend's actions because you knew what he was gonna do and you participated in some form, even though you never set foot out of that car and into that store. Now, sometimes the person will know what the other one is doing, but it still should not be you charged with the same murder. You know, maybe some lower.
Just be riding down the street and see their friend.
Absolutely.
And it happened, actually. It has happened in one of my other interviews.
Yes, it does happen. And so then it's up to your lawyer to then try to prove that there was no connection between you two. But meanwhile, you're probably held no bond because it's a murder charge. You know, you're now not in high school anymore. You're terrified. You may be 18 or 19 in the system, in a division, because you're charged with murder with men who are well seasoned in the system. And so a lot of gang things control the jails. And so if you're not in that lifestyle, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
And kids need to understand the consequences that come with a lot of their choices and actions. And
the people they surround. They surround themselves.
Absolutely. So once you maybe can't get that fair jury trial or trial, then you have to worry about sentencing. And like we said, some people's sentences are not on par with the crime and the person's background. Sentences are often heavier than they need to be. The sentencing structures are already above what they should be. That's the legislation. But then the judges who have to utilize that in their practices aren't always fair. You know, and I think that Black people just overall are not given the same benefit of the doubt. We're not given the same mercy, the same second chances that maybe little Timmy would be given if he made some of these same choices. It's our behavior and actions are always criminalized as opposed to looked at like, well, he's going through something, or, you know, most of the community has PTSD in some form.
The majority, all of the community.
From either what we see,
for real,
really, seriously, from what we have experienced in our own personal lives, from friends being killed.
From one year, I had 7 or 8 students killed in 1 year.
Yes, that's
murdered.
That's devastating.
That I work close with.
Yes, that's a devastating weight on your soul and heart, and so it's so much trauma that has gone unaddressed. And that we're really going to have to work on more than we have. And I'm hoping this whole new wave of uprise and really pushback that has stemmed from George Floyd, but from so much more.
So much.
George Floyd, unfortunately, was the straw that broke the camel's back, as you say. But there's been so many, so I hope the momentum continues, and that we continue to push until we see reforms, and not get sidelined by some of the attacks that come.
Right.
The revolution is never going to be easy.
But it's being televised.
But
right
it's
now,
being televised, and
it.
it's necessary. So, this is so the system. It has it's a lot of inadequacies, and it certainly was built to cage us, but not built for us to benefit off of.
Or even for us to rehabilitate.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The prisons aren't offering programs that really, help. If once you get out, you can go get a trade, and that's another thing. When you get out of prison, you could barely get a job.
Yeah.
And you're tempted to go back to maybe whatever took you to prison in the first place, but you have this stamp on your head. Mm-hmm. And I argue often in court at bond hearings. Well, he has 5 felonies that he served time for.
He's done
and if
with
we
that.
never can get past that and allow them to show that possibly they're new people, what is the point?
He's going to
right?
continue
What
to
is the
come
point
back.
of all of this if you have now this scarlet letter on you that is continually brought up? And it's not to say put it under the rug and no one should know that you've had armed robbery.
Sentence me to jail, have me serve my time, and then still criminalize me when I return back home.
Yes.
I did everything you said, and then you still saying, "Oh well, that's still not enough."
Yeah, absolutely. I've often thought about things that I would like to do if I did not stay a criminal defense attorney, which I often think about not doing a long time. Just it weighs on you. It has its things that come with it, but I certainly would want to put my passion for people in a different way. And I've even thought about things like reentry services. For people coming home from jail. There are a lot of women who lose their children, who need jobs and clothes and know how to interview. And they have a lot of agencies that are now starting to do that more, but it can never be enough of those. It's never enough. The youth, so many angles that can really be nurtured to try to help either on the back end of the prison system or the front end. And I think they're all important. And speaking of that, PTSD and trauma, I want to give a little selfless plug. My grandmother was a victim of homicide in 2018. My family, we are still healing from that. She was an 81-year-old, beautiful pillar of her community, gave back. But from that pain, we are trying to give some triumph and come from that. And my mother has led the charge with forming the Kedvale House Foundation. And Kedvale is a street on the west side that we grew up on. K-Town. And what our foundation wants to do is address all types of trauma in the communities, and really just help people really recognize their traumas. A lot of people, because we go through every day like a robot, we normalize it. We normalize it. And mental health is so fragile, and you're okay today, tomorrow you could not be. And right now, she's focusing the Kedvale House Foundation on suicide prevention because Black youth are committing suicide at a very high rate now. And that's very different from the past and very unusual. And so we need to really find ways, and they're going through a lot.
Right, they are.
Right, they're seeing a lot, they're absorbing a lot.
They're seeing their friends die off quicker than ever.
Yeah, they do a lot of stuff at home.
They do a lot of stuff,
So just
then you're going to school, you're having issues, then you having, because it's hard to find a safe place, and everyone does not work out of compassion or empathy. And I always push that, and I always want to surround myself with people who has empathy for the people. Doesn't matter where you come from, you can show some empathy.
Absolutely.
Because it goes a long way. And with the youth, you show them some type of compassion and empathy, they will forever be there with you.
Yes, absolutely.
Baby, you can raise up. I would just want to raise up a nation.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
That's it, absolutely. And so I want to continue to work in my community, continue to help my community, continue to see people, regardless of where they come from, what they did, but just see people. Sometimes people go through that system and they never are seen. They're just floated through with a uniform and a number, and they're never seen.
Your name, number,
yeah, absolutely. They don't know what's going
yeah.
on, and so I will continue to do my work, partner with people like you who are doing your work and others, and no matter what forum I end up doing it in, I just promise to always do my best.
Do your best.
Yeah.
Anything else? So you were saying about your the foundation.
Yes, we will be posting some things for the Camille House Foundation. We had some suicide prevention programs coming up, and then COVID-19 hit.
Yeah.
But my mother is working on a program to partner with school teachers, and to have programs possibly taught to children in school about how to identify feelings, how to cope with things, how to speak with each other, conflict resolution, and identify signs of suicide and things like that. So once things kind of come together, I'll definitely let you know, and we'll probably be posting in some forum, maybe Facebook, to alert people for support and if they're interested in participating or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for coming. I want to also say that I plan to work with Camille in the future with my non-for-profit, and my whole goal is to work with the youth in Chicago, matching them up with the innate skills that they have to produce some citizens out here that's going to not only build themselves up, but build up their community around them as well. I think she'll be a great component to the RAIN project because she can offer that insight when it does come to the justice system, and just letting them know that there are people out here that care. You don't have to just, oh, she's an attorney, she don't know, she's against me. No, everyone is not like that. Yeah. And all adults, I know it's a lot of adults that don't listen, but there are a lot that do. And we do want to work, because at the end of the day, I think this generation is the one that's going to turn everything around. Absolutely. And we have to put everything into them and let them know we have their back. It's time to get rid of them old ways. Them old ways haven't worked in 400 plus years. Come on, people. 400 some years it didn't work. It's time to do something new.
Absolutely. And I think so much of our youth need just that burst of love and help with their self-esteem. There's so much hopelessness, wondering if I'll live to 18 or 21. Will I live past this situation? Maybe my mom's on drugs, I don't really have anything. Letting them know you don't have to be what your current situation is. And even though this has been centuries of hate, right? This country, basically, the Constitution was built. Black people weren't even considered human, right?
We're still like 3/4.
And
the other quarter, I'm a gangster.
Right. So letting them know that and it's hard when you just see the police killing Black people on video and just the constant bits of racism. It's hard to love who you are for some people, right?
Like, why you hate me? So now, and that goes into Black on Black crime. That thing they put, that stigma they say Black on Black crime. You're going to continue to show me only this. Right. So I guess I'm supposed to be this way. We are what we eat. We are what we see. We are what we do.
And girl, that Black on Black crime, they don't call white on white crime. They don't call Asian on Asian crime. So that's just another way of boxing us in.
You where you live, so that's just
absolutely.
Because if somebody white was next door, I check them too about their dogs.
Right. And so, like we said, we want to remind not only our youth, but just everyone in our community that 400 plus years ago, when we were kidnapped and brought over here, right? They didn't kidnap slaves. They kidnapped engineers and kings and queens, scientists, doctors.
We are brilliant. That's why they want to make you feel less than what you are. They're doing it for a reason.
Yes.
let's just think of it as a relationship, and a man who always wants to dominate, he's going to get with a weaker woman because he finds comfort in that. So you just apply that to how the United States have treated.
It's a mental
thing. If I can just, we only want the ones that's weak, or we have to keep them weak.
Right. Which is where a lot of the fear. Right. You gotta wonder why there's so much fear of black people.
And so strong, and especially with black women, I feel we are the most hated because we do have a voice. We gonna say what we want to say. We gonna do what we want to do. I know these two right here are, and I know it's plenty more out there. And I'm going to keep speaking my truth. I know Camille's going to keep in her everyday life and at work and with the people that she works with. I'm definitely going to do it. It's going to ruffle feathers, but guess what? It's going to build up a new nation of people that's going to help you when you can't get up and go to work no more.
Right. So. Absolutely. And I like to live by the quote, well-behaved women rarely make history.
Hello.
So.
Thank you, Camille.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for letting me be on the Rain Project. I appreciate it.
Thank
Peace.
You can cut it, Tim.